to participate in the meeting of council by accessing the meeting, which will be live streamed on our Middlesex Centre YouTube channel, or by contacting the municipal clerk to receive a registration link to join the meeting being held electronically. Members of the public may also attend the meeting in person at the Coldstream Community Centre located at 10227 Ilverton Road, just by Poplar Hill and Coldstream. There are no additions to our June 1st agenda, and I didn't see that there were any additions with respect to disclosures of community interest. So just before we get into our delegations and presentations, I just want to note that last Saturday, and that would be May 28th, the tree planting day at Deer Haven can best be described as a great success. There were beavers and cubs from 68th Scouting Group present to plant the trees, as well as their parents and Middlesex Centre staff and Enbridge staff, and everyone made short order of the planting. The trees and mulch and planting supplies were acquired through a donation, a $5,000 Fueling Futures grant from Enbridge Gas Company. And we're grateful for partners like Enbridge and the Cubs and Scouts, because they help make our parks greener and facilitate sustainability and carbon neutral initiatives. So the event was great fun, and it makes our community better for the trees and the time that we spend together. So thanks to both of those groups, and we'll move on to delegations, presentations. We have the Geisbers, McRobert Drain, and Mike DeVos from Sweet Associates will be in attendance to give us our engineer's report on that project. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, the Geisbers McRobert Drain is a new municipal drain, so it would be the report is under Section 4 of the Drainage Act. There was a petition in Lot 5, Concession 7, to create a new municipal drain as the property was looking to tile their property. The property does drain in several different directions. So when we looked at potential possibilities, we could have gone in multiple locations, leaving the property heading downstream to a legal outlet. However, it made sense to create some cutoff drains and just create two different routes leaving the property. The main portion, we're calling it, goes north across Ivan Drive down through Lot 5 in Concession 8. That particular property did have a private tile that was installed relatively recently for their property, which created a little bit of a challenge, but what we ended up doing is incorporating that pipe as part of the municipal drain. So there's about 640 meters of existing pipe that will be incorporated as part of this report, as well as a new 10-inch diameter plastic pipe beside it. And the new pipe will cross Ivan Drive to serve the areas in the north part of the property on the south side. There is an area in the northeast corner of the petitioning property that would go north across Ivan Drive, but we are going to propose to take a pipe westerly, I'll call it, parallel to the south side of Ivan Drive over to the main drain. And likewise, there's another area in the northwest corner of the property that slopes northwest to the intersection of Kamoka Road and Ivan Drive and across the road and continuing downstream. So we're looking to create a cutoff drain heading from that intersection area, heading east over to the main drain. There is an area in the west part of the property, closer to Kamoka Road, where there is no municipal tile there now or private tile, and there is no legal outlet. So we're proposing a short branch to start on the east side on the Geisbers property, heading west across Kamoka Road and into a natural water course, a very short distance west of the road. We'd be looking at putting in some catch basins at the road crossings to provide some access for surface water, as well as inspection and also to monitor and make sure that there's air that can get into the pipe as well. So all in all, there's about 1,140 meters of new pipe and this will service most of the property. There still is a small amount of area in the very southerly portion of the property that would head in other directions that the landowner did not deem it was necessary to create new municipal drains for. And I think I'll stop and open up to questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Ben. Look to council. Are there questions? Councillor Arts.
Through your Madam Mayor to Mike, there's a main drain west and a main drain east. I assume one of that will be the existing drain and the other one's the drain that twins beside it.
That's correct. Yes, the east drain is the existing and the west drain is the new one.
And branch C, so that will run towards the property from McLaughlin's. That the outlet runs that way then? I think you're on mute, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's about 22 meters or about 70 feet of pipe that will start at the creek on McLaughlin's, and it'll head east up to the road, and then it'll, once it gets on the road, we'll cross the road with a new boring underneath Kamoka Road to get to the east side there.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions, or I can't hear anything right now?
I'm sorry. I turned mine off because it sounded like there was feedback. I'm just going to start again. There were no additional questions I could see. So I just said we have a motion before us, and that is that Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre receives the Geisberg McRoberts Drain Report from Mike DeVos of Street Associates dated on March 24th, 2022, and authorizes that the project proceed, and that the Court of Revision will meet on July 6th, 2022, and further that Councillor Arts, Councillor Shipley, and Mayor DeVee be appointed to sit as members of the Court of Revision, with myself being the chair. If I could have a mover, please, and a seconder. Councillor Shipley, Councillor Arts, any opposed? Oh, we can say, are we in favor? Sorry, I'm so used to that. Everyone's okay with this, so that is carried. Thank you for the report then, Mike, and we'll see you on the 6th of July. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You as well. I will now move to the minutes. If there are no errors or omissions, the motion before us is the minutes of council meeting held on May 18th, 2022 be adopted as printed. I don't see any. Oh, yes, Councillor. Oh, you're moving? No, you're asking a question. Go ahead. You're not. So I'll just have a mover here, Councillor Heffernan, and a seconder, Councillor Cates. And is everyone in favor? Yes, and that is carried. Thank you. Moving to the consent agenda, these are the items that we typically would receive as in one motion, but if there's anything here that anyone wants to ask about, clarification, details. Okay, we have some questions. Should we wait till? Yeah. Good morning. We have Tiffany Farrell, our accounting expert, here to answer questions. I'll start with you, Councillor Shipley, and then we'll go to Councillor Huff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the Mayor to Tiffany, just a quick question for clarification, and maybe I've already asked this in years previous. Fire administration, Tiffany, over by 25,000 on bunker gear, boots, helmets, etc. And Good for Colin got a grant or coverage for 15 and 5 for 20,000. Why are we still showing 25,000 over if we got $20,000 grant?
So through you, Mayor DeVete, that would be because it would be compared to the approved budget. So what we would do is we have what council actually approves at the beginning of the year, unless we did an actual budget amendment, which when it depends on the report that goes to council. Normally, if it's something that we received a grant, we are going to spend it. We get council's approval within the report as more of a budget overage. We don't amend the budget. And so you will see it as an overage, but with an explanation that there was a grant secured and that's why it was over. So it's more just a clarification. I like to keep the first approved budget as much as possible, unless it's a brand new project that council hadn't seen coming.
Okay, so just to clarify, so the bottom line will include that $20,000 off of the cap, off of his budget then?
Yes, so through Mayor DeVete, yes. So it's not an actual overage. So you'll see it looks that way on these type of reports. And then we do have the funding that was secured. So there was no tax levy impact by any means.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tiffany.
And Councillor Heffernan?
Through Mayor DeVete to Tiffany, just a couple of questions on the treasurer's statement. So the first page is the statement of reserve funds, and they were for DC charges. So basically, we were in the hole about $1.5 million because of the DCs hadn't been collected yet, correct?
Yes, and so through Mayor DeVete, that's just the wastewater at the end of the year that we are in a negative position.
Okay.
Overall, we are in a larger negative position. But yes, so the negatives would show that we have put out more money in capital than we've collected in development charges to date as of December 31st, 2021.
Okay, and the second question I had to do with attachment 2. So so Sifton's had a credit balance. And then Kilworth Heights, there's a note B. Can you just kind of explain that a little bit more? Because I'm not really clear what's happened. Do they still owe money, or where are we at there?
Yep, through you, Mayor DeVete. So the Sifton one specifically, there was a prior, like many years ago, a cost sharing agreement. So at the end of the year, there were still DC credits for them to use. So what would happen is every time that a builder would get a permit and development charge within the Timberwalk subdivision, then they would not pay the wastewater development charge. And then that would, like, it's a DC credit. So Sifton would recoup it through that. So they had 2 left at the end of 2021. In 2022, it has been released. So at this point, there is no DC credits outstanding for Sifton. With respect to the Kilworth Heights, the DC credit with respect to Kilworth Heights, that has since been cleared out. So that had to do with the cost sharing agreement between the multiple developers with the municipality. And there is some that is still being worked out with the team. So I think in 2022, it would also be cleared out. But what it had, so in a cost sharing agreement, if they oversize specific lines, they would get DC credits. However, when we did look through those agreements, we have done more with cash transactions rather than the DC credits, and just paying the developer for doing that work on behalf of the municipality. So that's that cost sharing one with Kilworth Heights. And I'll have more information in 2022 for the 2022 statement.
Anyone else? I don't see any hands here on the screen. So we do have a motion before us, and that is that the item 6.1 through 6.3 listed under the heading of consent agenda for June 1st, 2022 be adopted as recommended. Could I have a mover, please? The second, Councillor Cates, Deputy Mayor Brennan. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, staff reports. Again, this is financially related. This is preliminary year-end surplus and reserve fund transfers. Would you like to give your report now, please?
So through you, Mayor DeVete, this would be our preliminary year-end surplus and reserve fund transfers for 2021. The year-end audit is just completing now, and council will be receiving the financial statements at the June 15th meeting. So you'll have more final numbers at that point, but I don't see significant changes from this report. So this report specifically outlines the surplus as it relates to the tax levy. So that's money that we raised on taxes that was not spent on the specific, within the specific departments. You will recognize the fact that, say, something like building department had a significant surplus as well. It's not reflected here because that is user-based, and that surplus would have been transferred immediately to the reserve fund. That would be the same for water, wastewater, and stormwater. They are treated separate from the tax levy. So this is just tax levy supported items, and I have provided a recommendation of where I would like to transfer that surplus for the 2021 year. And there is also an explanation of how the surplus came to be. So a lot of the stories and the reasons are actually very positive and why we had such a surplus. Specifically, if we're looking at something like general administration, there was $370,000 in additional supplemental and omitted billings. So we did have MPAC assessing a lot more properties. And that had to do with like a lot of our growth that we didn't really see in the previous years. We did see in 2021, which was great to see, but we didn't have the budget at that high. So 370,000 was related to that. And when it comes to, we did have a lot more follow-up costs with respect to COVID than we were expecting. I know when we were budgeting for the 2021 year, staff did take that into account, but no one saw that the community centers would be closed for an additional 6 months into 2021. We are kind of projecting maybe a 2-month closure. So that had a significant impact when it comes to our hydro, our water, wastewater costs, our gas costs. And you'll see that fall out throughout the entire report. We also, I'd like to draw attention to the fuel. So in 2021, the team had budgeted for those increases in fuel costs that were expected in 2021 that didn't quite happen to the end of 2021. But we are seeing now in 2022 as fuel is over $2 a liter and has been for some time. And so we did develop that fuel or the fleet reserve fund, which is mainly for those fuel costs. So at a previous council meeting this year, that reserve fund was established, and you'll see that's one of the items that we have transferred the surplus to in order to support that so that we can stabilize our budgeting in that department. And then some of the other stuff, if there is any specific questions, we can actually talk with some of the directors, or I can mostly answer any of the items. But this would be our surplus for the end of the year. The other things that you're going to see that's missing in here is the sale of lands for the lands behind the wellness center. So that $3.6 million, it was immediately transferred into reserve funds. So you didn't see that, you don't see that in our surplus because it went right directly in. And that is the report. I will take questions if council has any.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll look to council for questions, comments. Deputy Mayor Brennan, go ahead.
Tiffany, I guess for me, it's a concern when we have that big of a surplus from tax revenues, but there are circumstances why that happened. But if that's not going to happen again this year, I would assume that we're a little more out of COVID this year. Fuel prices are up, so I would hope that we don't have that big a surplus out of tax dollars again this year, and I don't suspect we will. But it is concerning, and I think it's concerning to the public when we see that much money that we raise through taxes, that it's not being used. But on the other hand, it goes into reserves, and we're a little short on reserves anyway, so that bolsters them up a bit. But just a bit of a caution that I don't like to see that much money left over on taxes. Thank you.
Did you want to make a comment, Tiffany, or is?
So through you, Mayor DeVito, I completely agree, Deputy Mayor Brennan. It is a significant surplus. It was a lot of it was really related to that COVID-19 pandemic, and this year, as we have seen, the facilities are staying open. Everything is kind of status quo compared to the previous years. So we are pretty positive that we will not have such a significant surplus this year. The one thing that I can say, and we will continuously report this on to council, would be anything to do with our growth. So the supplementals and admitted assessments, that positive, that 370,000, because those are complete estimates, not knowing what those values will come in when MPAC does the assessments. But however, that wasn't money that was raised on taxes, rather that's above and beyond revenue that we're receiving that we can transfer into reserve funds. But with respect to the other, with within the other departments. I do not foresee a large surplus that we've seen in the past, and we will be managing that internally and ensuring that we're communicating to council as early as possible if we do see something that's going to be happening, and we will know why.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Well, I don't see any more hands. I guess my comment is too that it's good to have the reserves because we have to react to sort of environmental and political and all kinds of factors that we can't control. But having said that too, I mean, so there's snow reserve for those years when we have snowstorms that destroy our salt reserves and keep everyone up all night driving around trying to keep the roads clear, and now the gas prices. So thanks for clarifying all of that, Tiffany, and making sure that we do have money for both capital and operating costs, and we can manage through these dips and peaks and valleys. So the motion before us is that the transfer to reserves in 2021 for the buildings and facilities reserve fund in the amount of $1,700,000 be approved, and that the transfer to reserves in 2021 for the general vehicles and equipment reserve fund in the amount of $295,000 be approved, and that the transfer to reserves in 2021 for roads capital reserve fund in the amount of $289,292.59 be approved, and that the transfer to reserves in 2021 for fire vehicles and equipment reserve fund in the amount of $100,000 be approved, and that the transfer for fleet reserve fund in the amount of $360,000 be approved, and that the transfer to reserves for the operating reserve in the amount of $50,000 be approved, and further that any remaining portion of the 2021 surplus be allocated to the roads capital reserve fund. Do I have a mover, please? And a second. Deputy Mayor Brennan and Councillor Heffernan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We don't have any notices of motion today. We do have a correspondence item. We have a motion. Does anyone wish to speak to this item before I call that item? Yes, Councillor Heffernan.
Just when I was reading it through the mayor, it looked to me as though the new, didn't write it down, but the new bill is basically potentially taking away some of the authority of the conservation authorities, and that they may need to increase their budget, which means an increased levy to us, to offset pressure on existing staff because they're being asked to do things quicker and more at once. So anyway, it's just an observation. I don't know necessarily true all of my observation, but it just seemed that it could be potentially problems down the road.
There's a lot of change on the Conservation Authorities Act. Maybe I'll ask the CAO just to mention some of the highlights and impacts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the mayor to the members of the council, there have been some status reports that have been provided to council earlier with respect to the servicing and the different standards that will be set. And so to minimize that cost impact, it's critical that we develop that relationship and communication to ensure that we have a set level and expectation so that we can maintain a status levy so we don't have that jump. And that's something that we're working on as staff to just maintain and make sure that we have that agreement in place to understand what the offset for service demands are. And so if there's anything over and above, it'll come to council in the form of an agreement, and that way we can budget accordingly for it. So we're on it, and we're just monitoring at this point to see how we can make sure that we maintain the status quo with our conservation authorities and maintain a good relationship as well.
Just as a little add-on, I think the only other thing is this is 1 of 5. So we're going to see more of this coming our way, as you all know. So just for the benefit of the public. So if there are no further questions, the motion before us is that the council for the municipality of Middlesex Centre receives the correspondence item 9.1 listed on the June 1st agenda. Mover, Councillor Cates and Councillor Heffernan. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. I'll look to the deputy to give an update on what we did at county at the last meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We We met last Tuesday in the morning. We had a in-camera visiting session on ambulance services, and we went through a lot of stuff in there. County Council started at 1. Economic Development Caravan, her department received 4 awards for different things that they've been doing over the last year. So they're doing a good job at promoting the county and trying to bring different things to our county. So congratulations to them for that. We agreed on a tender for a new tractor for Strathmere Lodge. North Middlesex has a new subdivision going in with 75 townhouses and a lot of single family houses. So they're growing, and that's a good sign. There's a report come back on a notice of motion about crosswalks and different colorings on crosswalks. Chris Trainey has concerns for safety, driver's reaction, slippery roads with the different paints on. He has trouble with the colors being used because a lot of colors are traditionally used for certain things, like red for stop signs and different oranges and greens for different things. So he has some concerns. That people would have to look at colors that haven't been used for specific things. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, because it just doesn't seem feasible with the restriction in colors that the county wants to put in place and the different safety concerns. So I don't think there's going to be anything like this allowed on county roads at this point in time, strictly because of the concerns. There were some speed limit concerns. Chris looked at those around the golf course in Wardsville, Kamoke on the west end, Denfield on the north end of Denfield. They're maybe extending some of those lower speed limits to the outer limits of those areas, just to try to get traffic slowed down before they're coming into those slower zones. We're council pay, they're looking at bringing it into the 50th percentile across into the 50th percentile, so that we're more competitive with everybody around. There will be some increases next term. It won't take effect until November the 15th of 2022. The county warden's position will increase by $5,000. Council pay would increase by $1,286. Our next meeting is in June. Public meeting for the official plan for the county. There were some key changes made for 20. It goes through to 2046. So that's still ongoing. So there are, if you check the county website, there are some public meetings and some different things. If you're interested and want to get involved, you can. There's some changes to the county website that are happening too, but again, you can go to the county website. And don't forget the county golf tournament, the Warden's Golf Tournament on June 23rd. There was an invitation sent out, I think, if you can either golf or you can just buy tickets to the dinner if you just want to go for the dinner that evening. So other than that, was about it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputy? I don't see any. Okay, so now we have to go into closed session. And our motion before us is that the council for the municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourns to closed session at 9:59 pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, to discuss the following matters. Under section 239(2)(e), litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and under section 2F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. If I could have a mover, please, and a seconder. Councillor Cates and Councillor Shipley. All in favor? And that is carried. So if we can wait for the live